So it is a weird time because I was on Amazon the other day. I was going to order something and it said will arrive on February 22nd. And I'm like, I don't want to wait that long. And then I'm like, oh wait, February 22nd is tomorrow, or it was tomorrow, or whenever it was. And it feels like we are getting so close to the NFL draft. We're getting so close to free agency. We're getting so close to the combine and all that stuff. And yeah, it still just seems so far away. And I think a big reason why is we're spending so much time. There's so many mock drafts out there. There's so much, and I don't want to say misinformation, but there's a lot of conflicting information, whether the Bears are completely committed to Justin Fields. Are they shopping Justin Fields? There are so many things going on. At some point, you're just like, I feel a little bit like we're a kid waiting for Christmas, except it's October and the Christmas decorations are out already. And I'm like, I just want it to be here. And I think that that's the way a lot of us feel about the NFL draft. A lot of things that are going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. I just got my schedule for the NFL Network in March, and it's crazy. Like I might as well, it might as well be October of the NFL season, the way that my March looks like right now. But there's a lot of cool things to talk about. We're going to have a great show. And you know what, Sammy? Let's just go ahead and get started.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. Huge show for you today. Not only is Carmen Vitali going to be joining us here in a matter of moments, but Ian Kenyon from the 33rd team is going to be here in just a matter of moments. And if you're not familiar with the website, the 33rd team, I implore you to check it out. It is really cool. It is chock full of information. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment, but just want to give you a couple of little housekeeping tips right now. Now, obviously, we're going to continue with Take It to the Rank on Tuesday nights, leading you up to the Super Bowl. But this week, we are going to have a very special edition of the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. We're going to have Chad Reuter join us from NFL.com. He's done a 3-round mock draft, and it's pretty favorable for our Chicago Bears. So we're going to go in, we're going to dive deep and dig into it with him. And we've got a guest line. I don't want to give it away here, and I don't want to say who it is, because if I say who it is, the comments are going to just be all about him, and I'll spoil it. It's a guy, a polarizing figure amongst Bears fans. Actually, not polarizing. None of you like him. I'm the only one who does. But I'm not going to give that one away. But it's going to be a great show, but not as good as this one, because we got a lot of cool things happening right now. So joining us right now, as always, our co-star, Carmen Vitali of FoxSports.com, CHGO. I'm not putting over any of your other employers. You get two. You get a 2 employer minimum. That's what you get.
That's fine. That's great. You honestly, I'm just the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. The Sick Podcast with Adam Rank's Carmen.
People, nobody thinks that way. Although I will tell you, Daniel Jeremiah does his Meet the Media, and he's going to do that on Friday. I'm thinking about crashing it. I'm thinking about crashing the podcast. I'm gonna talk to our PR guy and be like, hey, when I jump on, this is for NFL Fantasy Live, and then when I get on, I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm with the Sick Podcast, and really turn the table, because that's the kind of person that I am. But I'll be doing that. So we're happy to have you. Good to see you once again. Glad that you survived the Super Bowl and all that stuff. But listen, I know I told you this last week. You're disappointed that you're going to be missing Chad Reuter, but we have got a great guest joining us right now. I mentioned before, he's with the 33rd team. He's the managing deputy editor of the 33rd team. It's a great website. They've got a lot of former players who are contributing a lot of great content. I was reading, we're going to get into something that Greg Jennings put out. Mike Tannenbaum is a member of this. Mike Martz does some stuff for them. They got a lot of great, like, former coaches, GMs, and former players, but I like Ian the best. So let's welcome Ian Kenyon, who is going to be joining us right now of the 33rd team. How's it been going? I love the website. How has it been treating you?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on, and it's great to meet you, Adam, and you, Carmen. So, yeah, I've been here for almost 6 months now. I think it's like 5 months, and it's been great. It's such a fun thing to be a part of and to work with so many talented and smart people. It's really a blessing to be able to work with such a great staff.
Yeah, you guys got Dirk Cutter to do something in the media, which was fantastic. I had to do a double take at that because I was with him in Tampa, and his son and I are very good friends, and I got to know the Cutter family very much. But one thing Dirk doesn't like is the media, and he's waiting, testing the waters. I loved it. I loved it so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's really cool to get all these coaches and players and GMs to talk about current NFL topics and provide all of their knowledge from their years of experience. It's really a unique thing for us.
Yeah, and I saw that Matt Castle, I want to talk about at some point we'll talk about his way too early quarterback rankings, which I love. Matt Castle is always a fascinating figure to me because I remember it because I was working for the Orange County Register back when he was with USC, and he was there, obviously he played quarterback, but he was also a tight end. I don't know if you two are old enough to remember a movie called Jackass with Johnny Knott. Listen,
yeah,
I don't know.
I snuck into that. I was not old enough, but I snuck into that movie as like a 11-year-old or 12-year-old or something stupid like that.
I one of my favorite pieces of trivia is in that movie. Johnny Knoxville is in a Tennessee uniform returning punts in that thing. And that's one of those things the USC special teams are blowing them up. Their punter kept punting the ball too far and he couldn't handle it. So they needed to have a quarterback throw it, but they didn't want one of their regular quarterbacks to do it. So they called out Matt Castle to be the guy. So I don't know if he's on camera, but little piece of trivia that I find fascinating, and I drop it at parties and people don't care. And then I look like a moron. And it's pretty much my lot in life. But Ian, I'm not bringing you on, and I'm not going to put you on the spot for any of the people who do, mock drafts for you or anything like that. I know you right now have, I think it's your third or fourth mock draft up. It is your mock draft 3.2, excuse me. And this is one that's led by like TJ McCrate does it, Kevin Cohn, Justin Casey, and Evan Pritt put this together. They did. I honestly really love this mock draft. If you don't mind digging it, I just want to get your perspective because I'll tell you what they have the Bears doing, and that is swapping spots with the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts would move up to 1.1. The Bears would go to 1.4. They would get a second-round pick, which would be pick number 35, the 79th overall pick in the third round, and the Colts' first-round pick in 2024. Do you think that would be a pretty good move for the Bears?
I think that's a great move for the Bears, and I think that's the type of deal that they should be looking to do, right? So they lost that second-round pick in the Chase Claypool trade. They clearly need depth at multiple positions. The Colts definitely need to, add their top quarterback. And sitting at the fourth spot, they could get jumped by anybody who wants to move up to 1 or 3. We know Houston's probably going to take a quarterback. If you're the Colts and you believe in Bryce Young or you believe in Will Levis, whoever it is, giving a first-round pick this year, a first-round pick next year, and then additional second and third, that's not too much to go up and get your guy. I mean, that's totally within reason. So for the Colts to do that, and then the Bears, they drop 3 spots. They still land an elite defender. They still, replenish some of those picks. They're able to grab, wide receiver help for Justin Fields in round 2 if that's the route they want to go. And then you still add a third-round pick and a first next year. And that first next year, if Justin Fields doesn't work out and he doesn't look great this year, because I know there's a lot of skepticism, I'd say, between, is he the guy, is he not the guy? Then you have 2 first-round picks next year. You can package maybe your 2025 pick, and then you go up and get your Caleb Williams, Drake May. We'll see.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's just, it just seems like good business. And I don't know why. There's been all this talk, obviously, about the Bears taking Bryce Young and then maybe even trading Bryce Young, like after doing a draft and trade. But I just don't know why you want to take away the choice or the option, and that that gives away some leverage with that top spot. So it just seems to be good business, and they're still, like you said, landing an elite pass rusher or perhaps an interior D lineman, and being able to start plugging all of the holes that they need to, because not only do they have depth pieces they need, they've got starters that they still need. So, that jump starts this process and gives them even more capital, so they're in the same position next offseason too, going into the 2024 draft.
Is there any chance that Houston doesn't take a quarterback? I know that's one of the things too, because I know a lot of Bears fans will be asking, can we move down with Houston and then move down with the Colts? What is the feeling around with the former GMs that you talked to? Is it a lock that Houston's going to draft a quarterback?
So I have no insider insight on that, I would say, but my general thought would be that, it's going to happen, right? Like there's no way they pass on a quarterback. I think if job security were a different thing, and you could say, hey, let's punt another season, let's add depth pieces, let's go after Caleb Williams next year, I think that would make a lot of sense in a lot of like general fans' minds when it's you kind of get into the Madden mode and how you build a team. But just when you factor in job security and first year head coach, I just can't imagine that they're not going to address the position. They need to find someone in there to give the team hope and just help that organization immediately rather than kicking the can another year.
I'd be curious to see. No, yeah, sorry.
Please go.
I was gonna do it all now. I just had a question, because bringing that point up though, and then we've already mentioned Caleb Williams, Drake May, at this point from the 2024 draft. Is there a sentiment, do you think, among all of these guys, again, that you get to talk to all the time, is that this is kind of a holdover draft or a anticipatory draft where you're like, all right, maybe we won't see quarterbacks go as high because we're not super thrilled with this class, but we know that there's a huge class coming in the year after them?
Oh, no, I think you're still going to see all these quarterbacks go high. I know, in this mock draft that we just put out, there's 4 in the top 10. Teams are just desperate for quarterbacks. It's when we talk about Caleb Williams and Drake May, it's more from the sense of these are the can't miss guys. These are the people compare Caleb Williams to Patrick Mahomes, Drake May to Justin Herbert, that type of player. But you can't bank on landing those guys next year.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. And I think that one of the things that gives the Bears a little bit of an advantage this season is that there was so much turnover with coaches at the top of the draft. So Houston, to me, I agree with you, Ian. They have to draft a quarterback. You've got a first-year head coach, draft your quarterback, you build with him for 3 years. And if things don't work out, like if they ended up with Will Levis and Will Levis didn't work out, it would allow them the kind of Matt Nagy limbo year of okay, well, let's see if we can get another quarterback and maybe turn a quarter with something like that. Indianapolis is in the same position. Carolina. What you run into is teams like Tennessee, Atlanta, maybe to some extent, or even the Jets. The Jets conceivably should go with the rookie quarterback. It would make a lot of sense. They have a really young team. Robert Saleh does not have that kind of time. He has to prove it this season that he can get to the playoffs. And that's the kind of the most frustrating part, I think, for fans is that you're not matching up the quarterback with the coach. And it's you guys are on different timelines, and sometimes you want to get that started, but there are 3 teams definitely that'll be looking at quarterbacks. Ian, do you have a preference of which one of these quarterbacks that you like, who you think is the best just watching football?
So I personally like Anthony Richardson the best. I know that's probably a hot take for most people. But to me, I'm all upside. And to me, Anthony Richardson is the guy that has the highest upside. And you just take the home run swing, you see if it works out or not. Bryce Young, this is a weird quarterback class. Will Levis comes with his own question marks about accuracy. This year was kind of a down year for him. He played injured. People don't know, can he elevate a team to that level? Bryce Young is phenomenal. He's an awesome quarterback. But at the same time, he's the smallest quarterback that's going to go in the first round ever. Like it's not even close either. Like I saw Nate Tice compare him to Doug Flutie the other day, like in terms of size, and it's like that's kind of the build. And like if you're gonna take a quarterback that high, man, that's a risk. Like the other thing that I've kicked around in my brain too is if you're investing in Bryce Young, you're hoping he hits, you're hoping he's a 10-year starter, but you get to the end of that rookie contract, even if he does hit, are you going to invest $250 million into him at that, at that size? Are you going to, that's a tough question. So that's where, to me, Anthony Richardson is kind of the guy where it's like, all right, you got the build, you got the speed, you got the arm, you get a good coaching staff in there, you work with him, and you just hope he hits. And if he does hit, it's a home run. If he doesn't hit, hopefully, I mean, I don't think you have to take him in the top 5. So if he doesn't hit, then you maybe can reset and pull a Josh Rosen situation, and have someone else in a year or two.
Is Anthony Richardson one of those guys where he would benefit from maybe sitting behind someone, like maybe not going in the top 5, going in the top 10 to a team that has a starter? I'm talking about the Lions, where he can sit behind them and develop a little bit more and then kind of come into the league with a little bit of a head start rather than being one of those top 5 quarterbacks that is expected to start right away.
Absolutely. It's the Trey Lance route. I think that's a good parallel for him. And I know it hasn't worked out for Lance yet, but I think that's the type of situation he needs. I think Detroit would be a great landing spot for him. You set him up with Penei Sewell there. You set him up with Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's a great situation for him. I think that's exactly the type of team he should land on.
And if he goes to the Lions, then I hope it's a Kellen Mond situation. And it's like, it just didn't work out. And no, I'm teasing. I don't want to put that kind of evil. No. Listen, it's a Bears podcast. What do you want from me? There's a Lions fan who's in the comments every week. I got to tweak them. A touch, but the Lions are in a perfect position to take a quarterback like that. I'm still convinced that Will Levis is going to fall. I think that they'll start seeing right through him, and I think he's going to tumble. But a team like the Lions, even the Tennessee Titans, in the situation that they're in, they're they're like a dark horse to me of like moving up and trading with the Bears, or they could also wait and take a guy like Richardson or Will Levis or somebody who falls like that because they can keep Tannehill for another year and then see what happens after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say with Levis and with Richardson, I'm really interested to see what happens at the combine. When you get Bryce Young measuring in, I think, let's say he measures in, 5'10", 195. And then you have, Will Levis measuring in at 230. You have Richardson measuring in at 230. And then you have these guys throwing on the field. Like, what's the discourse going to be at that point? And not that people don't know that these guys have a giant size disparity, but when you actually see it in person and have the numbers in front of you, I'm very curious to see what the discussion changes to.
I want to go.
Yeah.
I think my internet connection is lagging, actually, guys. I'm sorry, because I feel like it pauses and I'm like, oh yeah, you're done, and then you're not done. I'm so sorry. But on the subject of the combine, though, I was just reading something interesting too about how these front offices how much weight they put on the measurables and the things that they see at the combine. I think we swung one way where we thought they were super important, and now the pendulum has swung back to they're like, does it even really matter because we've seen so many anomalies? What is your take on that and how much the combine can make or break, especially a guy like Bryce Young, who is going to be standing next to Will Levis, who's 6'5", and all these other big guys where you do see that disparity very starkly?
So I'm a big believer in thresholds. I don't think that you can say, this guy ran a 4.3, so therefore he's better than this guy who ran a 4.4. But I do think what you can do is you can filter out players based on, are they an NFL caliber athlete? There's a lot of, receivers, let's say if they're running 4.72, man, that's tough. It's very unlikely that you're going to be a hit at that point. But if you're running mid 4.5s, like you're fine. There's no issue with that. That's where for someone like Jackson Smith-Njigba, it's the 40 is important for him because if he runs 4.68, he's going to be an outlier if he hits. I mean, there's not a lot of guys who run slower than 4.65 who are 6 foot 200. Like that's a pretty rare outlier in terms of athletic measurables. So I think it matters in terms of just measuring your athleticism, but you can't count it twice. Like don't move a guy up who you know is fast. If he runs 4.3, then vault him up your board. If you know he's fast, he's fast.
Yeah, there's a lot of good information on the website, the 33rd team. Bill Polian gives an example of what the combine meant to him. There's also another piece. Forgive me, I can't remember who wrote it, but I was reading it today about like don't fall in love with these workout warriors. So a lot of good perspectives on your website, the 33rd team. Make sure you check it out. Matt Castle, who we talked about a moment ago, did a nice little article on the way too early quarterback rankings for 2023. He's got Patrick Mahomes, obviously, at number 1, Jalen Hurts at number 2. Number 13 is our guy, Justin Fields. So I feel like that's a pretty fair ranking. And also one other thing that I love about your site is the fantasy part. Underdog Fantasy has put out a top 250 of their best ball prospects coming up for the coming season. And as a quick reminder, Underdog Fantasy is the best way to play fantasy sports. It's super easy to get started. Go to underdogfantasy.com, or better yet, download the app, the Underdog Fantasy app. And right now, if you sign up, first-time subscribers, if you use the promo code SICK, Underdog will match your initial deposit up to $100. And I know you're like, well, the season's over. We just played the Super Bowl. You know what? There's going to be draft props. And this is very important. PGA. I play fantasy golf. This past weekend, I don't want to brag, but I will. I had John Rahm. I had Max Homa. We had Tigala. I should be getting paid to do fantasy golf. I'm as good at that. I'm not that good, but I had a good week. But Underdog Fantasy is a great way to do that. So there's a lot of good information. I want to go back to what Matt Castle was talking about with his rankings. There was something that you guys tweeted out, I believe it was today, talking about Justin Fields. Could he have a similar type breakout to what Jalen Hurts did? Yeah, there we go. Look at Sammy. Sammy's on the ball. He knows my mind. Jalen Hurts, do you think that it's possible that what's your feeling? Do you think that Justin Fields can follow the Jalen Hurts model?
I do, but I think they need to give him help, right? Like that's what the Eagles did. They added Devonta Smith. They traded for AJ Brown. They had Dallas Goedert in place. They got these weapons around him and then built the offense around this. They were actually like a pass first offense in the first half of games. And then they would like reverse it once they got teams in a negative game script. And then they would run the ball in the second half. So I think that I think Justin Fields can do it. He's got the talent. It's just a matter of, can they put the right pieces around him? And the other part of that too is the Eagles built their offensive line, right? Yeah. Which is completely different from what the Bears have right now. It's why they need these additional draft picks. It's like they need to build this team around Fields and figure out what they're going to do there. So in short, yes, I think it's possible. It's just going to take a lot of maneuvering, and they have the cap space to do it. Hopefully they can add some draft capital and do it. But they got to make the right moves.
And if I can jump in there real quick, Carmen, because I want to follow it up, because there was something else. Our friend Greg Jennings, one of my favorite, I don't know how this happened to me. Some of my favorite ex-players, James Jones, number 1, I love him. Greg Jennings is amazing too. I once did a sketch with Greg Jennings and he was poking me in the chest. I still have the bruise. Years later, he's that strong of a man, but I love him. He put out his free agency rankings for the wide receivers coming up for this upcoming season. And here it is. He's got Jakobi Meyers being the number 1 guy, of course, ahead of Juju, ahead of Alan Lazard, who played for the Green Bay Packers. You got DJ Chark amongst some other guys, Paris Campbell, who will have some familiarity. But you know what, Sammy, I want to do a scorching hot take. Can I do it? Am I allowed to do it? Do we have the enemy? My hot take, based on what Ian's been saying, and I agree with this, Jakobi Meyers is going to be this season's Christian Kirk, and the Bears are going to overpay for him, and we're going to get grief. And everybody's going to be like, I can't believe you gave this bum this much money. And I love what Greg Jennings had to say about him. I agree, absolutely. I think Jakobi Meyers is an underrated talent. And when he comes to Chicago and he joins Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney and whatever rookie we draft, we're going to have a solid Bayless. We're going to have a solid receiving core. So that's my scorching hot take. The Bears are diving in on Jakobi Meyers. How crazy am I?
I like it. I actually like it a lot. And I love the comparison to Christian Kirk because that's what is going to happen. Jakobi Meyers is going to be one of those guys who gets, I mean, I don't know for certain, but he gets something in the 15 million a year range. Mm-hmm. And people are going to be like, why are you giving that to Jakobi Meyers? But he's an excellent receiver. Like, he's a guy who should put up 850 to 1,000 yards, maybe even a little bit more than that if he gets in the right role, right offense. You have to pay for that type of production. And he's probably – it's also kind of a weak receiver class this year, right, in NFL free agency. So he kind of has a little bit of leverage in that way. There's not going to be a lot of guys getting – higher money than him. Like, there should be kind of a bidding market for Jakobi Meyers, and he's a great fit for Chicago and what they need.
Yeah, I want to talk about that actually receiver class a little bit more, the free agent one, because we, one of my coworkers and I, Ralph Vacchiano, we released our top 50 list of free agents, and looking at that top 10 receiver list, I think maybe those top 4 guys ended up in our top 50 list. And then that was it. Like, the rest of those guys didn't make the cut because of how weak this wide receiver class. Contrast that with the draft class, because I've also heard this is not the best receiver draft class either. Are we just kind of SOL when it comes to receivers?
I don't think so. I think adding someone like Jakobi Meyers would go a long way. And then I think when you get into the third round, because I know you guys don't have your second round pick, there should be some guys available, some complementary pieces. You look at maybe someone like Andre Yosivas from Princeton, the speedster who had a really nice week at the Senior Bowl.
Senior Bowl, yeah.
There's guys like that I think you can add. I don't think he's going to last that long, but maybe someone like Jackson Smith-Njigba, if you are to add, if you're able to add, a second and a third round pick in this year's draft as part of a move down. Just adding someone like that or a Keyshawn Boutte. There are some receivers in this class that I think have really high upside that people thought very highly of a year ago who just did not break out this year, who struggled in the college game. But that doesn't mean they're bad prospects. They're just not – they just didn't have a good year.
And that happens. And a lot of guys, and I'll be talking about this with Chad Reuter this week. A lot of times too, you got to look at the film of their entire career, not necessarily what they did this season. There's some other guys too. SMU has a pretty nice receiver. I think it's Rashid Rice. Tank from the University of Houston is an interesting prospect as well. And the Bears do have a second round pick. It is Baltimore's pick. The second round pick that they traded to Pittsburgh. Obviously, but you know what? If they make some of these trades, what we're talking about, if they get some of the picks from the Colts, they'll have some maneuverability and some opportunities to go out there and do some things. And I should mention too, they have Equanimous St. Brown as well. And by the way, if you go to the 33rd team, Equanimous St. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown both sit there and break down the Super Bowl. I don't want to give this away. I think this is hilarious. Both of them talking about we left Vegas during the middle of the game. Like, such a player move. Like, yeah, we watched Rihanna and then we bounced. It is like, okay, I actually like that. I actually think that's a pretty cool thing. And it's cool insight into, if you're a player, you're like, that's a little bit different. Kind of like comics leaving the open mic early. But in any event, let's take some questions. If you don't mind, Ian, if you I don't know how long I don't know if you can stay for a little bit longer, if you got to go.
Yeah, I can stay for another, 10 minutes or so.
Let's do it. Let's take a couple questions from the crowd. Are there any offensive line must-haves coming out in this draft? Thank you for the question, Logan.
Yeah, I would say Broderick Jones from Georgia. He's our number 2 ranked player on the board at the 33rd team from TJ and his group. They're very, very high on Broderick Jones. I think he's a very young player. He's declared after his redshirt sophomore season. Played left tackle at Georgia. Did a great job there. I think he would be one of the guys that I would target if I were the Bears. If they moved down, let's say they move down from 1 to 4, and they, for any reason, are not into Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. He's probably the next guy that I would look at for them.
I love that. I love that he's your second ranked prospect because I love everything offensive line. So it makes my heart happy. But I mean, yeah, those guys coming out of Georgia, they're coming out of a professional program at this point. So they run a very pro style offense with their offensive coordinator actually now in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those guys are more prepared than pretty much anybody could be coming out of college.
And I become a little bit of a big school snob myself with a lot of these guys. Like, yeah, if he excelled at Georgia, I think he's going to end up being pretty good, which is, it shouldn't be that hard to correlate. All right, let's see one more question from the audience with Ian, and then we'll let you go. Who would you draft if you didn't trade the pick? Ooh, good question, Tony. Ian, which way would you go if you had if for whatever reason the Bears couldn't move that pick? Who would be the guy that you would look after?
I would take Will Anderson if it were me. To me, it's just so hard to find premium edge rush talent. And I know he was not quite the same player this year as he was last year, but I think there was some injury stuff going on, if I remember right. And who he was as a sophomore was outstanding. Like the production playing at Alabama. I mean, he was getting Von Miller comps. If you can land a player like that at 1, just do it.
And it didn't work out too poorly for Jacksonville or the Detroit Lions last year going with those edge rushers. So there is something to be said about that. And so, but in any event, thank you so much for being with us. Again, I implore everybody to check out the 33rd team, follow it on Twitter. And of course you can follow Ian on Twitter right there. Anything else you got to plug before you get out of here, sir?
No, just follow me at Ian Kenyon NFL and follow the 33rd team. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much, Ian. We appreciate you. There he goes. The great Ian Kenyon. Make sure that you are following him and the 33rd team. It's a good site, Carmen. I don't mind seeing it. You know what's funny? Their fantasy stuff is pretty good too. Okay. I don't mind saying it. I don't care. Listen, I'm confident. I'm confident enough in myself and my abilities that I can be like, yeah, they do a nice job over there. You know?
Yeah. Listen, it's the biggest misconception, man. There's room for all of us. The amount of the rate at which people consume sports content all year round. Are you kidding? And I really do feel like they do such a good job of getting, again, like former coaches, current coaches, players, like they get, guys that are really in the league that have been in the league for a long time involved. And I joked about it in the beginning about Dirk Cutter coming on there. I cannot stress to you how I got his son Derek on the phone. I was like, did your dad really just do that? And he was like, I know. Isn't it hysterical? Because media was not, Dirk is a wonderful man. He's so funny. Yeah. I enjoyed a really good relationship and friendship with him, but man, he does not he's a football guy. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to play those games. So it was so funny to see him show up on a media site.
When I say that you guys ruined him, who do you think I'm referring to? Because it could either be your
Arizona State.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think he was such a nice man. When he came down from Boise, his introductory press conference with the Sun Devils was such a delight. And then I don't know. There's nobody wanted him to do
opportunity. You don't realize all the BS you have to put up with as a head coach when you're a coordinator. Like you are dealing with football and football only, and that's the dream, man. Like that's kind of the hot take in this industry is like not everybody should be a head coach because of not because that they're any less of a coach, less of a football mind, anything like that. It's just because they are not cut out to deal with the media and having to play all those games because it's all a circus and some of them don't want to put up with the circus. So no one ruined anyone. Dirk is wonderful and he's still coaching now. I mean, his son just graduated Boise State, was a receiver for them, his youngest. And so now he's like moving into an analyst role or no, he has a real job. I forget where he's at now. I think he switched locations, but he couldn't stay away from coaching for long. So now he's back in the college game. It's fun.
There was no coaching hire I was more convinced that was going to work than Dirk Cutter going down to Arizona State. It was right after Bruce, because he replaced Bruce Snyder. And you're like, well, this is going to be a slam dunk. There's no way this fails because Boise been doing so well. But you know what? He's doing good. I'm happy for Dirk Cutter. I'm glad that he's doing well. And we wish him much.
I think he's still at Boise State. Yeah. Yeah. No, he was replaced by Dennis Erickson at ASU. I was there for all of Dennis Erickson. So
Dennis, that's
one
a story.
Of these guys is not like the other.
That's a story for another day. How about another question, Sammy? Let's change subjects. How much do you trust Ryan Poles to do the right thing at the draft? You know what, John? I'm glad you asked this question because we get, this thrown at us a lot. And a lot of people, and it's funny that you'll see this on Twitter, that people ask me, I'm sure they ask you. EJ always gets involved in this a lot as well. And it's like, why do you guys trust Ryan Poles so much? And, and it goes back to the organization that he came from and knowing people who know him, like Cynthia Freeland, who is a frequent contributor on this show, went to Boston College with him. And I trust her judgment immensely. And so I believe like everything that that we've heard about Ryan Poles, I've heard it to be true. I just expect it to be true. Him and Ian Cunningham coming from these great organizations. And it's not flash in the pan guys that you're like, you had a cup of coffee here or doing whatever. I think these are two men that work their way up the system the correct way. I really like the approach that they took to the draft last year. Look at the second round picks. I think both those guys are studs. Braxton Jones, stud. I like Velus Jones. I know a lot of you for, well-reasoned argument to be skeptical with and that's fine. And I won't shy away from that. His rookie season did not go the way that I expected it to, but I'm confident moving forward that we're going to find some value with that pick. So I think that I have a lot of reason to believe in him. And I really do think that he is going to do the right thing. And I think that there's a lot of avenues of possibilities for him. And so for me, I trust him.
Yeah. I mean, same thing. I've had many discussions with people that know him. I actually was just talking to Will Blackman the other day who played with him. And he's like, he brought him up on his own accord. We were even talking about Ryan Poles. And he was like, he's like, I played with Ryan Poles. He's like, he was even back then, like he was such a good like football mind. And you just think about how he just good. And he's just such a great guy. And I have all the faith in the world in him. More than that, though, I think the Bears have put him in a really good spot. Not to mention, judging from last year's draft, it also seems like he and Matt Eberflus are on the same page. And I cannot stress to you enough how important that is for an overall organization success. Because when those two departments are segmented or siloed, things there's so much miscommunication. Think about it. Matt Eberflus has to coach these guys. He has a certain system. He has a certain way he does things. He has a certain way he calls plays, how he evaluates players, all that other stuff. He needs to be supplied with guys that fit into that mold. And it just seems like Matt and Ryan just have a really good working relationship, and they're very much on the same page, and they spend a lot of time together brainstorming and how to make this team better and how to improve this team and do that together. So again, that's a really good situation that has really nothing to do even with Ryan Poles himself, but the fact that the Bears have created this culture where this is all a collaborative effort. And that's so important.
Yeah, that's one of the best things too. And I understand where everybody's coming from because the history of the Chicago Bears over the last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years has not been great. And it's understandable to be skeptical because there's not a lot of great evidence that the Bears are going to end up doing the right thing. But I think over the last couple of seasons, starting with the drafting of Justin Fields, that we've now started to see this organization evolve. I mean, when you look at everything with Justin Fields, when you look at them closing on the property in Arlington Heights, that shows me that this is an organization ready to join modern NFL football. And there are some other teams that might not be at that point, and you could have some questions about. And I think that 5 years ago, I would probably be as skeptical as anybody else. But I think that the last couple of seasons have shown that this team is now moving in a forward-thinking, positive direction. And I think you should have a lot of faith and should be looking forward to everything that's going to be happening. And when you guys get upset, when Jakobi Meyers gets $90 million, remember, everybody was upset at Christian Kirk last year, and look what it did for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that can have a very similar type of impact with the Bears this coming season. All right, how about another question, Sammy? Ooh, what are you looking forward to, the free agency or the draft? Maybe both. The one thing about free agency is that it'll give us an inkling of what the Bears are going to be doing in the draft. Because if the Bears go out day one, and let's say they throw a lot of money at Jakobi Meyers, and even though I don't think this will happen, what if they worked out a sign and trade with the Washington Commanders and brought in Daron Payne? Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, there's two big needs knocked out immediately. And maybe that gives the Bears a little bit of flexibility in the draft, that maybe they're looking at offensive linemen in the draft. And that's another thing too. What if they go out there and they spend a lot of money and they bring in 3 new starters on the offensive line? Then that the draft is going to be heavily focused on bringing in defensive sided players. So really one leads into the other. And so for me, I love the free agency aspect of it. I love the fact that we have so much money to spend. We have the most capital. We have to spend a bunch of it. And I get to be on the NFL Network for 3 consecutive days. I know I'm their fantasy guy, but believe me, if the Bears are out there trading for Daron Payne and they bring me in for a fantasy take, I'm not even going to tell the producers. I'm going to derail the segment and I'm going to go off on that signing. But what about you, Carmen? Which side of it do you look forward to the most?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. I think it just depends on, well, I mean, I'm used to covering just one team. So I was always like, all right, what do we have more of, the draft capital or cap space? But now that I cover 4 teams, I don't know, the free agency is such a slow burn. Like everyone talks about, oh, free agency opens, and like that first week is a flurry of moves, sure, but like free agency keeps going. Mm-hmm. So I think the draft is just the NFL has just done such a good job of creating such a grand event around it. But it is, I mean, it's 3 days, and then you get everything there and then, and you can evaluate immediately. So I think the draft, plus it gives me an excuse to catch up on a bunch of college players and watch a bunch of stuff, watch a bunch of tape and all that, which I need to do a little bit more of, to be quite honest. I've been kind of everywhere right now. But no, I love diving into that, and then just the predictive nature of everything, even if I still can't get my mother to understand what a mock draft is.
It's okay.
It doesn't make any sense to anyone that doesn't
who doesn't understand. Yeah, they're like, what do you do? That I honestly though, mine will make sense. I think that of everybody, mine's the only one that makes sense, because I don't predict players to certain spots. I do my mock draft with a twist. And I'm telling teams what they should do.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fun.
So for me, like I'm not telling the Bears who to take. I'm like, but you guys should trade down. You need multiple picks, so trade down 3 times if you can. If we miss out on Will Anderson, fair enough.
I'm like, no one cares what my opinion is. No one cares what I think people should do. I try as much as possible to talk to people around the league as much as I can, like scouts, coaches, GMs, personnel in general, because I want to know what the league actually might do. And so I try to get as accurate of a picture as I can by talking to as many people as I can, because at the end of the day, I'm like, no one cares what I would do. I'm not in charge of any.
Well, now I feel attacked, and that's fine. No, it's fine.
No, you have much more of a following than I do. So people care what you have to say. I'm being self-deprecating. That's kind of my thing.
I love it. No, I like it. But it's also, it comes to the thing of like, the problem with the draft and the draft coverage now is that everybody feels like they're an expert, not you, but everybody else does.
Not me.
And that's why like drafts and free agency always feels disappointing. It's like whenever they make a comic book movie, or anytime Star Wars, when Star Wars would come out with movies, everybody's headcanon is always so much different. Like, oh, I have this amazing idea of what should happen with this. And then Jon Favreau, who's in charge of doing this, has a different idea, or J.J. Abrams. And you're like, well, this is terrible because it's not what I thought it should be. And I think a lot of people do that with the draft. Like, I think that we should trade. I don't want to draft Will Anderson or whatever it is. And then we do. And then you're disappointed. And it's a big thing. But I don't know. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait for free agency to get started. Again, I mentioned this a moment ago about my schedule in March, which is bananas, partly because D'Angelo Hall is now a coach with the Carolina Panthers, which freed up a couple of extra spots. Yeah. So I'm going to miss him as a fellow analyst, but now I got some insight. Now I got a coach. I got a coach in the trenches that I can call. I can text them.
Yeah, absolutely.
D'Angelo, are you guys waiting for Jalen Ramsey? By the way, I don't know if you caught this. So Friday on NFL Total Access, we're going over 5 players who should be traded this offseason. I said Mike Evans being one of them. And I know we've talked about this before. Mike Evans deserves to go to a team that's closer to a Super Bowl, and that's fine. I said Jalen Ramsey should be traded. And I'm like, I forget which team I use as an example of this. It might have been, it was Cincinnati. And D'Angelo goes, oh, Carolina's one that should be on the lookout for him too. Like, he'd make a lot of sense in Carolina. He had not told us that he was in contract negotiations to be the defensive backs coach. And I'm like, retroactively, D'Angelo is giving us a little bit of insight of what he wants to do. I don't know how much pull he has, but watch out for that. So don't be surprised.
Yeah, he needs to also get used to not saying those things publicly anymore, because that's tampering.
Well, now I was telling our producer, I'm like, hey, remember when D'Angelo said, and they're like, no, because they're not paying attention. They're waiting for cues and rolling video and everything.
Right.
I'm listening. Steve Smith and I are active listeners. And I think that's why people don't like doing stuff with us, because we'll call like, wait, what did you just say? Like, call somebody out in the moment of like, a lot of times people will just be saying something. Because this happened one time with Marcus, where he was like, I'm going to sit Amari Cooper. And I'm like, hold on, what are you saying? No. And him and the other guy, one time we're talking about starting Jared Goff before Jared Goff really took off. And I'm like, you guys are insane. Stop saying this stuff. But in any event, that's a long ways. I don't even know what we were talking about, but we're going to go on. How about a question to save us here? But that, when in doubt, just Sammy, hit us with a question. Save me from whatever I was talking about. Will the results of this offseason be visible, good or bad, by midseason next year? I think that we could get a sense of, whether these guys can play or not. I think, if you look at this season with Kyler Gordon, and there were times where the results didn't match the process. And you're like, yeah, he's getting burned. And Carmen, you said this a lot, like they're trusting him to be the nickel corner out on an island, which is more telling than getting burned a couple of times, is that the coaching staff have determined that he has the skill set to do this. It's just going to take a little bit of time to catch up. So I think that we could end up seeing a lot of that next season.
I would say that they will have to be able to see some results visibly next season, by the middle of next season. I don't think it's going to happen until the middle of next season. I keep warning people that I think that it's still going to be a slow start for the Bears, given how much roster turnover there's going to be, how many new guys are going to be in the lineup, all that other stuff. But you have to start seeing tangible improvement by the midpoint of next season to know that your system is working. I don't think it's going to be in its full form for the next couple of seasons until maybe, going into the 2024 season. I think that's when the expectations can be, all right, this team better be a playoff team. This is the leeway that they're going to get. This is the leash that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are going to get. But I mean, if they're not seeing, if things are going wrong still at the midpoint of next season, when you've hopefully created a little bit of a bubble of talent around Justin Fields and you're still not seeing him, I mean, that's a bad sign. So I think that by the midpoint of next season, you're going to need to see tangible improvement to have faith that we're trending the right direction.
It could be very similar to what happened this season. They had a great week 1. A lot of it had to do with the weather, but they started off 2-2, and then they had the mini bye. And then after the mini bye, they came out and they looked like a completely different team. And there's a possibility something like that can happen. And it should give you a little bit of hope that this team is willing to and can make adjustments. So I think we will see something. And I think that it'll probably come after the first mini bye, or maybe we'll have a week 4 bye. And of course we're going to be the Hard Knocks team. So we'll fall in love with a lot of these players as well.
Like the parallels that are happening though with like the Bears and the Lions. Just like, if you get Hard Knocks, people are going to fall in love with this team. They're going to be out on this team week 4 when they're sucking through the first half of the season. Then they're going to turn it all around, and you're going to start to see flashes. And like, if the culture really is as good as we think it is from the outside, that's going to show, and you're going to know that, this is a team that's sustaining success. And I feel like we're all going to have a really, even nationally, is going to have a positive opinion of them, just like scrappy little Lions, who I think are going to be a force next year. But that's my dark horse, and that's my hot take.
They're going to fall back.
The Lions fan in the chat will be really excited to hear
I
that.
feel
No,
like
they're not going to fall back. They're not going to. I can't. You can check me on this. Old takes exposed. They're not going to fall back in. They're so fun. They're so fun.
All right. Yeah, you know what? No, because you know what? That was one of the things too. I forget who was saying it, whether it was D'Angelo or Steve Weich, who was really pushing Mike Evans for Detroit. Like Detroit should be the team.
I don't think Tampa's gonna let him go. I really don't.
We'll see. I'm just saying who should do, but like, or even DeAndre. Let's say like DeAndre Hopkins, but like the Lions should be in the mix. As much as you want to say like Dallas should be in the mix for players, like, oh, Dallas should be making a run. They should try to match what the Eagles did. The Lions are almost sort of there. And I think that having the multiple first round picks, they can go out there and they can draft a quarterback and be like, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think I think Will Levis is going to end up falling. I really do.
Because I've been saying that for a while, that I think Will Levis is a Dan Campbell type quarterback. But I think it was Daniel Jeremiah that had Anthony Richardson down there too. And after hearing Ian speak about him, I'm like, all right, you know what? I'd be okay with either of these guys.
Yeah, that was a shock. I love that.
I know. And you know what? I've been hearing that a lot more, that like Anthony Richardson, like he's better and he's more well liked and thought of higher than people probably think right now amongst league circles. But that also, I mean, speaking of Jalen Ramsey though too, did you see what Amon-Ra St. Brown tweeted at him? Was like, come to Detroit, man. And then so I forgot what other player it was. It was like, no one's going to Detroit from LA. Who was it? Oh yeah, Micah Parsons. The Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons. Like, no one's going from LA to Detroit. And I'm like, but why not? First of all, they play in Dome, so relax. And like, second of all, they're trending upward.
All right, we're gonna lose all the Bears fans, and I don't care. We're almost to the bottom of the hour anyway, so I don't care. Which organization right now, in all complete sincerity, what team would you rather play for? If you're looking at those two teams, the Cowboys and the Lions, and I have no reason to be pumping up the Lions. The Lions to me not only look more fun, I think I think they're a better team at this moment right now. I really do. I know that Micah Parsons is great. I would go so far as to say that.
Also, like, there's a reason they have that culture in Detroit, is because Dan Campbell and his coaching staff are probably the most player-friendly staff to play for. So you're going to have a ton of fun. Yeah, you're going to work super hard. But like, it's all, you're going to have fun playing there. It's going to be a great time playing there. You're not put under a microscope like you are in Dallas, because the Dallas Cowboys are just a marketing conglomerate machine all of their own. Like, you can kind of fly under the radar in Detroit, at least on the national scale. And like, also that city is going to love you whether or not you suck or not. Like, that's Lions fans. They have very low expectations usually. So I think this is the year that maybe like some people are actually talking themselves into. I realize that I haven't been on the beat very long, so like I'm not as scarred. And I feel like that's kind of a theme for every team but the Packers on my beat, of like, I don't know the pain and the agony that these fans have been through. I mean, even though I grew up a Bears fan, so I get it. But like, I like Minnesota fans said that to me all the time. They're like, we can't trust this team. You haven't been through the trenches with us yet. And I feel like that's the Lions too. But nevertheless, these fans love their players and they love their team. So I just like, go to Detroit. Get to play all your home games in a dome, a very comfortably climatized dome, and then you can go wherever else. But I don't know. It's a great destination and it's a great place to play, and it's a really fun team, and they're a really good team. And it's funny too, because outside of the obviously the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, the greatest possible scenario. Outside of the Chiefs, no team had a better ending of their season than the Detroit Lions, where you knocked the Packers out of the playoffs. You might have ended Aaron Rodgers' career. Everybody loved you. You won 9 games. You're the talk of the NFL. Like, you're all like, again, and it's very close
to like a Lions fan probably walks around right now feeling like they won the Super Bowl because there was no better thing. And you didn't have the stress of January. You spent January just enjoying football because like, oh, this is fun. And my team just had a great ending. Like it's like being the middle comic. You know what? You're opening for Bill Burr and you go out and you destroy and you just like, whatever Bill Burr does is fine. Who cares? Like I crushed. People think I'm great. I don't care about what else is going on. Go out and do your thing, Bill. I'm having a good time. And that was the Detroit Lions. So this has turned into a Lions podcast. And I apologize. Listen, the Packers suck. How about that? We'll throw it back to that. Is there another question before we'll try to get a Bears question in? If not, how could you feel the Bears actually traded Fields at the draft? Ethan, I honestly I would I will tell you this. If that was to happen, I mean, I'm not going to do a thing like I'm going to become a Jags fan or something like that. But I would not. I mean, I guess I would still do this podcast, but and Ella, don't listen to this part. But yeah, I would stop wearing Bears gear. Like I would just wear Angel stuff all the time, and I would begrudgingly talk. You know what it would be like, and it would be like the way that we talk about the Greg Olsen trade, and it'd be one of those things where it's like, it would be terrible. I mean, ultimately you'd be back. But it would be a very similar situation to be like, I can't believe this team did this. And I would be upset and I would not feel great about it.
I would probably delude myself into thinking that there is some master plan that I am just not yet privy to. But my faith in Ryan Poles would be shaken.
Yeah.
Very much. And I would probably still reserve judgment because I do think that in order to make a move like that, you have to have a plan. You have to have a rock solid, like, I'm going to get a haul and I can't turn this offer down. And yeah, I'm going to take a hit for it now, but I know I can take that capital and make this organization better, quicker than I can if I have him. And I don't know what that offer looks like, but yeah, my faith would be tested and shaken, but I would try very much so to just delude myself into being like, all right, there's a plan. We all got a plan. Because there would have to be.
And I can't even imagine that they would draft a quarterback this year because at this point, you might as, I mean, again, I still think Caleb Williams, I mean, I don't know. Again, you have to match up players to the time. Is we're trying to sell other teams on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and Richardson and Levis and all those guys. But at the same time, you're like, I don't know. I think if Justin Fields was in this draft, he would be my number one guy.
There's an argument to be made there for sure.
Like who would rate ahead of him? Like I was going back and forth with him and Trevor Lawrence when they were in college or coming out of the draft. I'm like, who won the head-to-head game? Yeah. But I understand like Trevor Lawrence is the guy we've seen forever. Right. I don't think
Bryce Young is pretty incredible. It's the size concern. And that's the biggest thing that Justin has going for him is he's an absolute tank that is also very fast, can run very well and elude defenders. And then he has a cannon. We just haven't been able to see it very much because of his offensive line situation. But yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made, though, that Justin Fields would go first overall in this draft, or he would be the first quarterback taken. So I don't know why you gamble that. I think the biggest argument for this move being made is the fact that, all right, Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus didn't draft Justin, and you live and die by your quarterback in this league. You just do. And if you're going to hitch your wagon to somebody, you better make sure you 100% believe in them that, if you're going down with the ship, at least it's your ship. And Justin Fields isn't their ship. So he would have had to have shown them this entire year that he is worth hitching their wagon to. Has he done that? I think he has. I think a lot of this is a smokescreen, and I think it's Ryan Poles. I said this way back a couple months ago. This is Ryan Poles playing chess because now not only are you going to get a haul for the first overall pick regardless, but if teams now think they have to talk you out of drafting a quarterback, then that price might just go up. So I hope this. I think that that's what this is. I don't think that Ryan Poles is going to trade Justin Fields.
Yeah,
but if he did, I would be.
I would be disappointed and shocked. But what I'm not disappointed in is Carmen. And once again, it's been a great show. We want to thank you for being here once again and being a part of this great show. And why don't we go ahead and show everybody how to follow us on Twitter, the social media at Adam Rank. I'm at Adam Rank NFL on Instagram, but on TikTok, Twitter, that's me. And Carmi V
across the board. I'm actually going to be on the herd tomorrow with Colin. Well, not with Colin Cowherd. Joy Taylor is taking over. She's hosting for Colin Cowherd. So I will be joining her on the herd tomorrow morning. Really excited about that.
Are you sitting opposite of her? Are you sitting in her spot?
I don't think so. I think Alex is still going to do that. I think I'm on the chair and we're going to talk through some things.
So the three of you. So you, Joy, and Alex Kerr. What a team. I'm very kind of taken aback by even being mentioned in the same breath as those two, because I have the utmost respect and admiration for both of them. So that's amazing. Well, I'm going to look forward to that. I'll make sure that I set the DVR and give that a watch. I like the Colin Cowherd show. So
I do too. I think it's a great one.
It's good. And you're part of the Fox family. It all makes sense. Mm-hmm. Look at that little maybe someday I can be too. But in any event, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everybody who participated this evening for being here. Thanks to Ian Kenyon of the 33rd team. Make sure you like and subscribe everything that they're doing over there. And be on the lookout for a very special edition of the Sick Podcast later this week. We can confirm Chad Reuter will be with us and another guest who you're not going to want to miss. But until that time, do you know who it is?
No, but I'm just upset that I'm not going to get to talk to Chad. He's one of my favorites. I know.
He's good people, and hopefully, so he'll be on some other point too. So don't worry about that. We'll coerce him to come back at as long as we don't offend him. He's a Green Bay. He's a Wisconsin.
Behave so he comes back. I can be on with him. All right.
I can't promise anything, but until that time, bear down. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy.